The last thing I want to talk about with you guys is some quotes that were recently hit the news and the YouTubes and word of mouth. And it's some quotes that Sam Witwer and Josh Trank have stated about the Star Wars world. So I'll start with Sam Witwer, and he was on a Twitch stream, and I didn't watch it. I have the quote verbatim here, but I didn't watch it, so I don't know the context. But I think somebody asked him a question about The Last Jedi, or he was just talking and it came out of him, I don't know. But he had some thoughts on The Last Jedi, which I want to read to you guys because I find it interesting. So he says, "The Last Jedi, to me, felt like a movie made by a guy who hadn't quite done his homework. I think Rian Johnson's a talented guy, but Bruce Lee didn't develop Jeet Kune Do without learning Kung Fu first. You can't reinvent Star Wars without knowing Star Wars first, and he didn't. For me, make a compelling argument for why Luke didn't go help his sister." He continues and says, "There were a lot of things in The Last Jedi I found compelling in a Rian Johnson filmmaker point of view. They just didn't fit into Star Wars. I don't think he did the Star Wars homework. The themes, what it's about, what the characters are about. But as a standalone film, if I didn't know what Jedi are or who Luke is or what he represents, I think there's just some compelling things in there. If that's not meaningful to you, that's awesome. No, sorry. If that is meaningful to you, that's awesome." So basically what he's saying here is he thinks Rian Johnson's a good filmmaker. He thinks that The Last Jedi was a good movie, a good Rian Johnson movie, but not a good Star Wars movie. And he's saying, he doesn't think he understood what the universe was about. And I 100% agree. It's no secret or surprise that I did not like The Last Jedi, which is cool. But there was just something about it that just didn't feel right to me. And like Sam says, for some people it works, and it's the best movie ever, and that's wonderful. But there's got to be something about the movie that isn't right if it's so controversial, even 3 or 4 years later, right? It's a very interesting movie. It's a challenging movie. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to dissect. For those of you who don't know who Sam Witwer is, he is the voice of Darth Maul in Clone Wars and Rebels. And he's also a huge Star Wars nerd, and his head is filled with Star Wars knowledge. He knows so much about this world. And he's just a big nerd overall. But I really like how he came out and said this, because I often feel like a lot of people who are directly affiliated with Lucasfilm or directly affiliated with Hollywood in general do not actually share their feelings about The Last Jedi. I feel like a lot of people are not silenced, but maybe scared to talk about it or share their true feelings about this movie in particular. Because also there was a dramatic shift in what people wanted to, or how many people wanted to make Star Wars movies after The Last Jedi. A lot of people were leaving projects. A lot of people were getting fired off the projects. A lot of people were getting offered to make Star Wars movies, but then they just declined because, they don't want to be harassed by fandom. But I honestly believe a part of that also has to do with the fact that this movie was a drastic change in what Star Wars means to not the people, but to the filmmakers themselves, and a lot of people just didn't agree with that. Now, I know that's just my opinion, and I know it might sound like I'm looking for an excuse to hate on The Last Jedi, and that's honestly not it. I just wanted to bring this to attention because no one from Lucasfilm has really talked about The Last Jedi in this way. And there are people that talk in a positive way, but it's very few. And when they do, it's very defensive, and they often talk around the subject, the issue, the main problem, which is the divisiveness. And I'm glad he had such candor in his response here, and that it wasn't too it was a terrible movie, it was so bad, it's not my Star Wars. I think it was a respectful way of saying it, and I hope it lets more people be open about their feelings about the movie And I wish we could have those conversations and not have to worry about who's right and who's wrong, you know? But nothing's going to change it. The Last Jedi is here to stay, and we have to, as Cap would say, we got to move on. So anyway, the second little quote here I have is from Josh Trank. For those of you who don't know who Josh Trank is, he was the guy that made that movie called Chronicle, which came out in like 2012 or something like that. No, it was like 2009. It was really early. It was one of those handheld movies. I didn't really much care for it, but I remember at the time a lot of people were like talking about how great that movie was, and a lot of filmmakers in Hollywood were very eager to work with Josh Trank because he made that movie. But anyway, so Josh Trank was actually supposed to make a Boba Fett movie. I think the announcement was going to come in 2015, 2014, something like that. Now, he was coming into the Star Wars world freshly off the Fantastic Four reboot, which would go on to be one of the biggest commercial and critical flops of that year. And there were so many issues on the set of that movie, and it has to do with why he didn't get to complete his Boba Fett movie or start developing his Boba Fett movie. So he actually came out and finally talked about what happened during that situation. So he explains that, you know, during the times of, you know, right before the Fantastic Four movie was going to come out, that everyone was talking about all the issues that were involving Trank on the set of the Fantastic Four. I don't know all the details, but I do know that a lot of the studio heads and executives were really taking over that movie and kind of not letting Josh Trank direct the movie he was expected to make or intended to make. And so he was, getting overrun by people trying to make the movie that he was supposed to make. And it just caused a lot of drama, etc. And all of that talk and word about drama on the set of that movie made its way to Kathleen Kennedy, and then and of course other people at Disney and Lucasfilm, and they started discussing, well, hey, maybe we shouldn't work with this guy if he's going to be such a problem. So Trank explains that Kennedy and him agreed that he should cancel his appearance at the April Star Wars celebration, where he was going to share the first details of his Star Wars movie with the world. And at the time, he had tweeted that he'd come down with the worst flu of his life. But the real reason was all of this information about the drama on the set of the Fantastic Four had arose. And they just thought it would be better if he didn't show up and they didn't announce the movie. So days later, industry insiders reported that he was fired from the project. And Trank said in a personal statement that he departed the film to, quote, pursue some original creative opportunities. Now, today, Trank claims, I quit because I knew I was going to be fired if I didn't quit. And Trank shared that he privately told his managers that he was done looking for work making blockbuster movies. So this article is a little wordy and doesn't quite make total sense. Basically, what he was saying was that he thought if he didn't quit, he was going to get fired because of rumors about what had happened on the set of the Fantastic Four. And they were going to fire him because they were scared of running into similar issues, filmmaking issues, drama issues, and he just decided to leave. And that movie, Fantastic Four, I haven't seen the reboot, but everyone talks about how bad it is, and it clearly affected him so much because he dropped out of making all blockbuster movies, which is crazy. But I thought this was interesting. I wanted to share it too because, we constantly hear about filmmakers coming into Star Wars and then they're fired or they left. Creative differences, what have you. And I bring this up because what we talked about at the top of the show is that Taika Waititi was announced to direct and co-write a new Star Wars movie. And now we're just waiting for the day to find out that he has left due to creative differences. How sad is that? That as soon as we hear a new announcement of a Star Wars movie or TV show or whatever, that soon thereafter, we'll probably find out that they have left the project. I hope that's not the case. I don't think it will be, considering he's already done a Star Wars TV show episode, and now he's going to move on to a movie. So I think it's going to come around. But anyway,